Good evening, Bears fans, and welcome to CHGO Bears After Dark, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app and use promo code CHGO when you sign up. And how's it going, everybody? Will DeWitt, Greg Braggs Jr., and the man, Jake Flannigan, here for this Monday night edition of the CHGO Bears After Dark. I'm feeling awesome. I had a week of just feeling sick and run down, and I'm healthy, and there's nothing like going through like a serious kind of illness for a week and then feeling good to kind of just appreciate feeling normal. I'm just going to put it out there right now. I feel like I'm on cloud nine and it's just like a normal baseline, and I'm just going to not take it for granted, at least for a bit.
There we go. Yeah, I was the same thing. It's like last week I was home because of the cold weather. Now all of a sudden it's 50 degrees out in Northwest Indiana and Chicago. So I was back to laying the bricks. Then I saw the boss man giving the text like, hey, can I jump in tonight? And I was laying stone at the time, and I was going to text, no, you can't, Jake. But I figured I'd stay out of the calm realm where he's like yelling at you about tweets you never tweeted at him.
That's true. And I know with you two, I won't have to worry about that. So that's why I wanted to be on Bears After Dark. So thank you.
Yeah, no yelling over here unless one of the takes that come out your way, later this episode is just completely off base, and I'll make sure to keep you in check, Jake. But I don't really anticipate that happening.
Yeah, maybe just yelling from excitement because, again, this is the greatest Bears offseason of our lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say, I think me and Jake are capable of the hottest of hot takes, but in the most positive of manners.
And that's what I love both of you guys. It's I know between all three of us, it is just like optimism city here on the panel here tonight. Yeah. And I don't even have to talk about Saturday afternoon and things like that for Greg. Like, we can just move on. We can talk about the Bears. We don't have to focus about college basketball. It's okay.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I'll lick my wounds. A good game to the Indiana Hoosiers. They took down my Boilermakers. Gary Ross is in the chat. He won a bet off me. I paid him up. He's gonna get his sandwich. Congratulations to you guys. And hey, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna say I appreciate it. We put in a lot of hard work and effort. I take it personally. The fact they were able to do that, and I saw I'm glad he didn't have to come at me on Twitter or anything after.
Well, after all, it's Super Bowl week, and it was IU's Super Bowl. So I mean, I'm happy for you guys. You won it. Thanks. Now, Purdue can move on to the bigger and better things. But hey, Super Bowl week. Shout out to the guys down in Phoenix. They were killing it all day today. So it's a big day in general for all city. Phoenix, Denver, and Chicago, and certainly our crew personally, they were killing it. Ryan Leaf on the show today. That was awesome.
That was cool to see.
Yeah.
Will, and you know what? We shouldn't give Braggs too hard of a time because, Purdue is likely to just rattle off a whole bunch of wins. They may not lose again until late March, but we know they'll lose again.
There'll be another
before April hits.
Hey, I'm not jinxing nothing. I mean, they're a lot like the Cubs in a lot of ways. They have curses they need to break first and foremost, but I know nobody wants to hear about my boy. I can talk about the Boilermakers all day long, and I do, but I don't want to punish our viewers, and I know Gary's enjoying it. So congratulations, Gary.
Well, I appreciate it, Greg. And speaking of that, I appreciate Gary for welcoming me back. And I saw Cam IGL as also mentioning they're happy that I'm back. And I'm glad to be here. So I want to thank everyone in the chat for that. So as you mentioned, Greg, it is Super Bowl week. I don't even think we need to do like a quote vibe check. We're all feeling, I'm assuming, pretty good because it's one of the biggest weeks. Okay, sorry. It's the biggest week on the football calendar each and every year. We all wish the Bears would be there. We'll get there. We're working our way towards it. But it would be a good time right now just to kind of start off the show to share like any Super Bowl week stories. Jake, you've covered, NFL for years. I'm sure you may have a few. Greg, you brought it up. So I'm anticipating something really spicy coming from you. And I have something that's to kind of at least hold my own here in this conversation. But I'll just open the floor. Who has the best Super Bowl week story to kind of kick off the show?
Wow. Not me. I'll go last.
I know he's putting me on the spot here. I mean, I can just remember as a Bears fan, I didn't mention it just as far as, crazy Super Bowl week stories. I mean, I think we all remember the Jim McMahon saga, if you were alive for it, but any Bears fan that's done their history or their homework on this franchise know that leading up to that Super Bowl was a lot of chaos with Jim McMahon. He moons the helicopter because they were trying to see if he was hurt and all this stuff, and I think for most Bears fans, that's probably what they think of. Mark Harmon certainly can rattle off those stories better than me, but just for me personally, I can remember leading up to the Bears being in the Super Bowl against the Colts in 2006 and how excited I was as a fan. And I'm probably more nervous because that year I actually preferred to play the Patriots, as crazy as it sounds, over Peyton Manning, because I just felt like that was the first time Peyton got over the hump against New England. And it almost felt like Peyton should have been there long before that. He was the better player, but for whatever reason, Tom Brady at that time, Tom Brady and the Patriots would always get the best of him. But we all knew Peyton was better at that time. Now, Tom wiped the floor with him with that rivalry as the years went on. But back then, Peyton was the golden goose. And it was like, of course, the one year the Bears get there is the year finally Peyton breaks through. And I can remember just having a real bad feeling in my stomach all week long about it because I was just like, it's a bad matchup. And then, of course, to see Devin Hester break the opening kickoff for a touchdown, fast forwarding to the Super Bowl itself was one of the greatest moments of my life as a sports fan. And I have a lot, obviously we all are the biggest Bears and Devin Hester fans ever, but I certainly was one of them. And somebody that was predicting his greatness before that season had started. And I hang out with a lot of friends that aren't Bears fans. One in particular, my buddy Pete. And he was doubting me all preseason when we drafted him, as I saw him at camp and kept telling him how great he was going to be. And then when we finally get to the Super Bowl and everybody's fired up, and I turned to him, I go, if he houses this kick, I'm going to kill you. And he just started laughing, and he did. And I think we missed like the next 3 minutes of that game because I was chasing him around my buddy's backyard, ready to just tackle him and rip him to shreds. I was so fired up.
Okay. See, now that's fun. It's not where I thought you were going to go. I thought you've been to Super Bowl week. Like it was in Indy like a decade ago.
I've been to a World Series game. I'm lucky enough to go to game 5 of the World Series. And it's certainly something that's on my bucket list to go to a Super Bowl, but have never been to one yet.
See, I've been to a stadium in which there was a Super Bowl being played because I was at IUPUI my freshman year of college. And there's a game, Lucas Oil. So I stood outside, watched the flyover, heard the roar of the crowd for opening kick. I was like, okay, time to run to the apartment and actually watch this sucker. But I was there for the opening kickoff.
You know what? And that's a good point. I was, being that I'm from Indiana, we were down there too that weekend. And how cool was that, Will? Because the one thing they got lucky with was amazing weather that weekend. Mm-hmm. It was, it was warm, and it normally is never that warm this time of year, even though it's warm right now. So go figure. But at that time, it was like, wow, this is unseasonably warm. And people were walking around in short sleeves and shorts on. And the thing that stood out to me was just like how they shut down all the roads. You could walk around. You could even buy a drink at a bar and then walk outside with that drink, and you wouldn't get in trouble for it. They really turned it into like a Mardi Gras atmosphere, and all the different things you could do, events or things you could go see, all the trophies. And I ran into Aaron Rodgers. Lovie Smith was walking with his wife, and nobody knew who he was. It was so like nobody even recognized him but me and my buddy. And of course, we've been drinking, and we go running right up to him. We're like, Lovie, I love you. And all this stuff. And Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels, we saw them at a restaurant later that night. And so, yeah, to see that and how cool that was, it's certainly to think about the day Chicago could get a Super Bowl.
Exactly.
It just makes you so excited for that because the opportunity for that is just amazing. How good it is to be able to have your city host the Super Bowl.
Right. I mean, celebrities everywhere. I got a fist bump from Steven Tyler of Aerosmith. That was pretty cool.
That's amazing.
I was jogging on the canal and I ran into Kurt Warner, who was also jogging on the canal, and I couldn't really keep up, but he did take a break and I caught up to him. I was able to say, hey, but the one thing I just wanted to share from that week that I didn't know at the time was that even if you lose, you party that night because the Patriots were staying on campus like 4 blocks from my apartment. They lost that game and they partied till like 4 a.m. and I heard it. And I had to walk there. It's like, are they really doing this? And of course, a lot of security around that building, but they were having themselves a time. And I honestly thought like you'd sulk a bit, be a little upset, but no, like they definitely had themselves a time, which I understand you made the Super Bowl. That's an accomplishment, and they've won plenty heading into that over the last, 5-6 years before, 7, 8. But still, like that surprised me that even if you lose a Super Bowl, that Super Bowl losing team still ends up having a big blowout bash that I tried to, crash, but was unsuccessful in doing so.
Nice.
I guess for me, it wasn't near a Super Bowl in proximity, but just the two Bears Super Bowls. The last one, right, that Braggs was kind of getting into with Hester. I was at 115 Bourbon Street, which is an amazing large scale bar facility that has like a stage and giant rooms and a beer garden in Marionette Park on the south side. And it is it's awesome. And when Hester ran that back, that place was just bananas. I literally jumped up on the table. Luckily it didn't break. And I mean, I thought then, the Bears are going to roll. Like this is going to be it. And of course it didn't play out that way. We don't have to get into it. We all know what happened, but still one of the most memorable nights of my life as a sports fan, but probably just one of the most memorable nights of my life, period, as well. Just a great time. And then as far as the Bears' actual Super Bowl win in Super Bowl 20, most of that for me by memory would be off of a VHS tape or, a DVD like most of you guys. But the thing that sticks out there is just the dominant way that they just rolled in that Super Bowl against the Pats. And then the fact that Walter Payton didn't get a touchdown in that game. And I was watching, a documentary recently and just kind of hitting that home. And it's crazy to think that didn't happen. But anyway, just, I cannot wait for the Bears' third Super Bowl appearance, which will be a victory.
Hell yeah, it will. And I can't wait for that day too. It's going to be joyous, and with CHGO, it's just going to be like it's like you thought the other ones were memorable. It's just going to have like that whole another level of meaning, and I can't wait for Justin and everyone to take us there sooner rather than later. All right, so real quick before we kind of get into the other topics that we have tonight, I just want everyone to know who's listening or watching, like, hey, what's in store? So we're going to kind of start off this show officially just by talking about that Senior Bowl game over the weekend, a few of the standouts for each of us. Then after that, it was reported earlier today from Kevin Fishbein at The Athletic that he believes the Bears are going to be very active at pursuing offensive linemen in free agency. I don't think that's really a spoiler, but I thought it'd be a good time to just start looking at them and come up with like a little bit of a wish list. And then at the end of the show, we're going to talk about that Keenan Allen news, maybe some Bayless Jones Jr. too, kind of focus in on that Bears wide receiver room. And that's just kind of the rundown of tonight's episode, just so you know what to expect. So as I said, we'll start with the Senior Bowl talk here. And I know Nick was there all week in Mobile, and he was just, he was kicking ass, honestly, of all the coverage that he was doing down there. I want to give him a shout out and just, a lot of props here on the show. But since the game was over the weekend, I just figured, and Greg, you and I talked about it earlier, like who stood out in the Senior Bowl. So I'll let you go ahead, Greg, to kind of start things off. Who's a player or two, or if you want to share one at a time, I don't really care, but who was a player that stood out to you over the weekend that kind of rose his stock in your eyes?
Yeah, it was an interesting game for sure. And it was, it was like during the IU Purdue game. So like I had it on the smaller TV trying to focus in as much as I can because I figured we'd continue to talk about it. And there were a couple guys, I mean, to nobody's surprise, a Purdue Boilermaker stood out to me. But at the same time, we did cover him last week here at CHGO Bears, Payne Durham. Nick Moriano did talk to him and had a nice video interview with him. I find him somebody to be really interesting because, when you hear Ryan Poles and everybody's like, oh, you need the offensive line, you need the defensive line. I think that kind of goes without saying when it comes to the Bears. The question is, how much will they attack the skill positions? Because I see some Bears fans, and we've talked about this before, and I refuse to believe that they're going to say, okay, Justin Fields got us 30 points a game when we were cooking and everyone was healthy. So we're going to put that down on our priority list at like 4th or 5th behind offensive line and defensive line and linebacker. Then we'll look at wide receiver and tight end. He said in his post-game presser, we are always looking for playmakers. You have to read between the lines of the things he's saying. And I think he knows that if they really want to take Justin Fields to the next level, like Jalen Hurts has now ascending to MVP stardom in a Super Bowl here as a dual threat quarterback, you got to get him the weapons. And Cole Kmet had a solid season for an offense that struggled to move the football and score at times. But you bring in Payne Durham, if you can add picks, that's the other key too, is like, not sure if he's going to go in the second round or exactly where he's going to go. But a guy like Payne Durham, you pair him with Cole Kmet. That's a dangerous tandem. And then you saw that in the Senior Bowl. He almost had like a 30-yard touchdown, but he was downed at the 1. I thought it was initially a touchdown. I'm like cheering for it on Twitter. And of course he was down at the 1, stepped out of bounds, but it was a great play. And he just has that look of a good tight end. And then he had a 2-point conversion shortly thereafter. And to me, that's certainly somebody that's going to be on the Bears radar. The other guy that I saw that surprised me, because I didn't realize who this guy was Jalen Wayne. Everybody's talking about Marvin Harrison Jr., the lineage of Marvin Harrison and his son coming out next year from Ohio State. Well, we got his teammate's son coming out right now, Reggie Wayne's son, Jalen Wayne from South Alabama. He had like 6 catches for 80 yards or 60 yards, something like that. I think maybe 86, but I know he had 6 catches, and he had that look. And then the other thing that intrigues me about him is, because it's all about value, right? He's somebody that may go in the 3rd or even the 4th round. If he's somebody you can get in the later rounds, where obviously we're going to be beefing up on defensive line and offensive line in those first 2 rounds. Yeah, I want a pass rusher. Yeah, I want, a center. And I'm going to talk about some of the centers that potentially we could get in free agency, but you just don't know. And if you can't, then there's some centers that you got to get early on here in this draft. Well, there's a wide receiver sitting there in potentially the 4th round that has that same lineage like Marvin Harrison Jr. does. I know who taught him how to play the game. And so that to me is intriguing at the very least. And he showed out, forget who his dad is. He showed out himself, a guy from South Alabama, a smaller school. And now he's shined, in the biggest moments of his career now, trying to move up draft boards.
I think those are 2 really good players to kind of bring up. And what I love about like the Senior Bowl week in the game is, like you said, it's not those high end rounds. I mean, there are a few of those players in this week, and we've heard about them from Nick, but there's a lot of these other guys that really are able to kind of establish themselves, make a name for themselves that maybe weren't on any of our radars before the week, but then now a little bit more about them and they're intriguing you. And it's a good time to kind of, leverage the next couple of months before the draft to learn more about them. And that's kind of how I took this approach. I didn't want to bring up, this guy really stood out. And like we talked about him all week, I was looking at some of those under the radar kind of guys that heading into the week, like we have that awesome draft board that we're working on for all of our diehards that, this is a name that we put down, but I didn't really know who they were, or really they weren't even on my like list of guys I want the Bears to draft. But one of those players for me was Michael Wilson, receiver over at Stanford. He had 4 catches, 76 yards, and a 44-yard touchdown in the game. That pass was like a duck, though. I know there's like multiple defenders around him, and that thing was like a lame duck in the air. Glad he was able to catch that. He's 6'2", 212. He has good size. And the one issue that I did notice after I looked more into him today was the reason why he's not like a higher round guy is he had a lot of injuries, foot injuries throughout college. And that's why he's kind of buried among this wide receiver class. I did see that Trevor S from PFF named him the best pure pass catcher the entire week down there at the Senior Bowl. And after all of those drops that we had for Justin Fields last year, I think we'll all take a sure-handed pass catcher if we can have one here on this roster. Sure. He's lauded for his work ethic. He was a captain at Stanford. He's smart. And I know he was like a day 3 guy heading in. A lot of people believe he moved himself up to day 2, depending on medicals at the combine and how he performs there. But for me, I thought when I watch him play, he reminds me a little bit like Alec Pierce last year coming out in the draft. And on top of that, he's a guy who can come in, compete. Would he be a wide receiver 1? Absolutely not. Could he be like a 4 in this offense and kind of elevate the 4, which is what we've been talking about on this show for months now? I believe so. And that's why he's someone on offense that stood out to me. I have another defender. Before I get to my guy, you have something to add, Greg.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to this point of Michael Wilson or Jalen Wayne, when it comes to receivers that you could get maybe in the 3rd or 4th round, that's really important for this team, because as of right now, Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney are in the last years of their contract. We assume they're going to re-sign and extend one of them, if not both, but you don't know that for sure. Anything could happen. As of right now, they're not re-signing either guy this offseason. They go into next year, let's say, God forbid, they both get hurt. They might not sign them at all. And you need to have options for the future, because right now only Velus Jones is one of those guys potentially. And nobody here feels confident that he's a route running. He's a gadget guy, but can he ever be an outside X, a guy that can run routes and go get the ball? We're far away from believing in that kind of thing. So you got to start getting some guys that you can develop on the back end that are at, the fourth or fifth option on your wide receiver depth chart. I think that's really important for this team.
Oh, absolutely. And we have to add talent at the top, talent to the bottom. We need a variety of different skill sets in order to make this offense work next year. Jake, I know you are, like me, like really big in all the draft stuff. So I'm sure you are watching, all of the Senior Bowl content we are pushing out, maybe some other outlets, and on top of just the game itself. Who stood out to you, man?
So I guess for me, I'm not going to claim to be at expert mode right now. I'm just not there. I hope to be at a little bit better position in about 2 or 3 weeks. By the end of the month, when we get close to the combine, I think I'll feel a little bit more confident about what I'm seeing and where I feel like guys could project. But I will say, I'm not going to take too much stock in what did or did not happen in that game, because of the quality of players that were there were not like the top of the top cream of the crop, right? We know that they were good, but it was a little bit weaker of a Senior Bowl. But that's not to take away from anything that those guys did. But I just say, for the guys that maybe didn't have big games, it does not mean that they won't be really big contributors in the NFL. And a guy like, let's see here, I have my notes, Jaden Reed from Michigan State, right? He only had 1 catch in the game, but a guy like that, we know he loves Justin Fields. So if he loves Justin Fields, I love Jaden Reed. And
there you go.
He's a guy like Greg was talking about that, let's see how the next month or two goes. And maybe he's someone that we need to keep an eye on. And another guy is Keanu Benton from Wisconsin. Like, I think that guy, what this does is Senior Bowl week, it starts me investigating probably more than I have of late. And it makes me think, okay, what are some reasons why this player was successful in college, but what are some reasons why maybe this player was limited and didn't have quite as much of a pop? And some of that could just be scheme or how the player was utilized or underutilized. So a guy like that is someone that could come onto the scene in the NFL and just turn into someone that is, a starter for you that's solid, or even more that you're not expecting in those mid to late rounds. So excited for those two players and to just dig into more research for sure. But I can't wait to talk about these prospects as we progress into this month for sure.
And I can't wait for you to self-proclaim that you are officially in expert mode this
year. I won't.
On the draft content.
More informed. I'll be more informed by the end of the month, no doubt.
Me neither, Jake. I mean, when we did that Thursday Senior Bowl show, I've never been more nervous for a show going in than I have this whole year for CHGO Bears. Honestly, it was I was freaking out the entire day about it, because I'm a lot like any other average fan. I watch college football, mostly Big Ten, what's around me. And there are people that watch college and follow the guys that are going to come out in the draft all year long. And I have a lot of respect for the people that really like Will, who do the research and really follow every single player. But my process as a fan throughout my life has been to, slightly follow college football, huge NFL guy. But then when we get to the draft, the players the Bears draft, then I look into them, To me, to know every player from all 7 rounds blows my mind. And I understand now this is our job now. We're supposed to know these guys. So I'm going to dig my heels in like anybody else, but I'll never pretend like I'm someone I'm not when it comes to this stuff. But that's why I picked 2 guys that are skill position, because there's one thing that I can get a beat on, and it's the skill guys. You asked me to start breaking down the offensive line. Our offensive line is going to be in trouble if I'm making those decisions. We need smarter guys than me making those determinations. And I get when people get a buzz around a guy, but for me, I only am going to stick to what I know and then build out from there.
Well, I'll be honest. I don't watch like college football religiously throughout the year. Now, unfortunately, this past year, the Bears were at a point where it was like, December, you can starting to look towards the future, and that's okay. And that's what happened this year, which helps me kind of jumpstart. And I'm just very, when I get micro focused on something, I can go, head over heels and just jump in like whoopee.
And I made the joke on Twitter. I go, I saw a highlight of a wide receiver that had a lot of speed. And I was like, after the first 7 seconds of this highlight video, I now want the Bears to draft him. And it was kind of tongue in cheek. But for a lot of fans, that's what they do. And then they try to pretend like they're like, digging deep into these guys. When at the end of the day, a lot of us, I'm not saying all, there's certainly people that do their homework, but a lot of us are just finding the highlight reels and getting pumped about a guy. And, that's okay. But as someone said, no one has a bad highlight reel, right?
That's true. That's a really good point. Real quickly, my final guy, I went one offense, one defense. And again, these are just guys that stood out to me that really were just a name, if that, before the week. And that was Lonnie Phelps. He was like, I can honestly say, like, barely a blip, like, on my radar before last week. But I just loved how he played on Saturday. He almost got a safety. He forced a fumble. He generated a pressure late in the game that was able to get the quarterback out of like panic mode, threw an errant pass that was intercepted. And those are 3 plays in one game that I swear I don't think we saw a defensive end make for the entire season for the Bears last year. So getting someone along the edges who can make an impact like that would be tremendous. But the one thing about Phelps still, though, is like, I don't know if he's like the best fit for this team as like a true defensive end. He's only 6'2", 251. He's probably more of that stand-up guy, so better for a 3-4 scheme. But again, I just wanted to highlight a player that was literally like a name to me a week ago. Now I know a little bit more about him, and he's intriguing me as someone who can translate to the NFL. Maybe not the Bears, though. Again, unfortunately, just with that size and maybe being more of that stand-up edge rusher. But just wanted to give Phelps here a little kudos on the show as well.
Kansas has been a scrappy football team lately. I got a friend that's a big Kansas guy. He's a season ticket holder for their football, and they've been scrappier than normal. Not just a basketball school.
Since mostly the Les Miles school. Like the Les Miles fiasco. Now they're good, right?
Yeah, they're in the right direction for sure.
Yeah,
competitive.
All right. Well, hey, coming up next, we're going to start looking at free agents amongst the offensive line. Do we have some dream scenarios? Maybe some guys that would be okay for the Bears to like settle for. But before we get to that, we have a couple messages that we want to share. And I want to make sure that you know that CHGO is supported by Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer since 1988. I mean, just look at their beer roster right now. You have that Blackhawks Pale Ale, which is limited release, that Bull City 312. They have that Bourbon County Stout. I mean, there's just so much going on. And I know, Jake, I saw you sipping on a 312. Is that your favorite beer right now from Goose Island, or do you have another one that's top?
312's been my go-to for probably 15 years or so, and No Plans is right there too. A newer one. It's a seasonal. It's very good. Mm-hmm. Blackhawks Ale's good as well. The Bulls one, solid. Yeah.
Nice. I mean, you can talk them up all day. It could be a whole segment on this show, just ranking the Goose Island beers. They're all so good. Definitely try them out. And they have 2 local locations that are open and ready to welcome you. Grab a beer right from their innovation tanks at the Goose Island Tap Room at 1800 West Fulton, or get a smash burger and a fresh beer of the week at the original Clybourne Brewhouse at 1800 North Clybourne. For reservations and pickup, go to gooseisland.com/locations. Goose Island Beer Company.
And I want to tell you guys all about Chi-Town Custom Cornhole, the #1 cornhole provider for Chicagoland and Illinois since 2007. Their signature box-style design can be digitally printed, covered in vinyl, and painted. Their cornhole boards come with built-in drink holders recessed in on the back, LEDs that light up the hole and exterior, handles for easy carrying, and handcrafted scorekeepers. They're veteran-owned and operated. They can ship anywhere and offer local pickups, specializing in corporate designs for your company's next marketing or social event, wedding gifts, and gifts for all occasions, and especially for tailgaters and backyard barbecues. Go check out their website, ChiTownCornhole.com, and make sure to follow them on Instagram at Chi-Town Custom Cornhole Boards.
All right, let's jump back in. Will DeWitt, Greg Braggs Jr., Jake Flannigan here for CHGO Bears After Dark, and we are moving our attention towards free agency and specifically the offensive line, because as I said earlier, Kevin Fishbane via The Athletic was like, hey, the Bears are probably going to be active spending on the offensive line because veterans can make an impact a little quicker than rookies typically do, which again makes a ton of sense. I don't think it's really surprising anybody, but it's a great segue to kind of use that to leverage and have ourselves an awesome conversation here tonight. So guys, I'll tell you how I kind of did it, because I know we all did it differently because we kept it very open. So I took 2 guys that can play inside, and then I looked at 2 guys that can play at specifically right tackle. And actually, if I want to be specific, my inside guys are left guards, AKA maybe we can move on from Cody White here. Before I get to one of mine, we're going to go to Jake first. Put Jake on the spot here. Yeah, surprising. That's good. That's good. Who's the name on your list right now?
So I'm very happy when I looked that you guys were going to be talking about offensive linemen and free agency, and we haven't consulted at all about this. So I love this. And here's my thinking. There are 2 very solid offensive linemen that are rated higher, right? That the Bears, in a perfect world could get. My thinking is that McGlinchey's not going to be there. I don't think he's going to be someone that's going to be out there. So I'm all in on Jawaan Taylor from the Jags. This is a guy that I think we have to prioritize in free agency. He's someone who he was in a battle for his position in training camp with the Jags heading into this season because they drafted right tackle, I believe, in the 2nd round, and he beat him out. He's also a guy who I think went through some recent tragedy. He lost his father in the offseason and kind of dedicated this season to him. He's someone who struggles a bit in the run game, but I think he's developing there. But as a pass protector, I watched a lot of film on this guy, and I've been kind of locked in a little bit more on free agency than the draft, just because I realize with this team, free agency and what Ryan Poles does is going to set the tone for how this offseason goes. And so I want Jawaan Taylor because he's someone that we can lock in at right tackle, and we have to protect our most precious asset, and that's Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's who I want. I think the future is bright, and the Jags are going to have some issues with the cap. They may be up against it and have to make some decisions. And I think Jawaan Taylor is going to be someone that the Bears could go out, spend some money, and lock him in at right tackle.
Did you have him on your list before you saw him in Notion under my name?
I did not.
I just wanted to know.
You love him?
He was on my settle. So McGlinchey, I'll be 100% honest, was like the dream. And like you, I don't think he's going to be there. And I don't know if I want to pay for him, but like if you're like window shopping and like, hey, price doesn't matter, which I mean, in the Bears case, it kind of doesn't this year, which is so much fun. But Jawaan Taylor was right there second. He's only 25. He's been playing in the league since he was 21 years old, and every single season he's played every game, and he's played over 1,000 snaps. So you're a 25-year-old player with over 4,000 snaps experience. Like that's so valuable, and there's just so much tread left on those tires. And like you, do I think he can grow a bit with the run blocking? I mean, absolutely. And I know this past year was really bad, but when you look at his previous seasons, like he showed that he can be more capable of a run blocker than we had this year. But with all my guys, that's actually kind of a theme of like they're a better pass protector than they are a run blocker. But that's priority number 1 is protecting Justin Fields. And so you have to sacrifice a little bit of that run blocking, prowess a bit if you want to be a better pass blocking team and make sure Justin Fields is protected. And one fun stat for Jawaan Taylor that I just want to share that I'm sure you'll love is last year he only allowed pressures on Trevor Lawrence on 2.5% of his dropbacks, which is the 3rd best mark of all tackles in the entire league last season. And he's going to be compared to some of the other guys like Orlando Brown Jr., Mike McGlinchey at a so much more reasonable price point. And he's a little bit younger. And there's, like I said, so much more like tread on that tire. He can last a little bit longer, and they can develop him and they can round out that game. Like if you put a proper emphasis on, hey, you need to be a better run blocker. This is their zone blocking scheme, which is kind of friendly to offensive linemen in general. He's easily somebody can like buy low and just get a lot of bang for your buck. So Jawaan Taylor is one of my early targets.
It's great. Well, like my car is started downstairs. I'm ready to go to the airport. I will go to O'Hare and pick him up. I want him.
You're going to take Benny the Bull with you to make up for not getting Tracy McGrady?
I'll pack the whole family in the car. We're going to get him. I want this guy. I think he's got elite level balance. He's got great feet. He's very strong too in the upper body. He can withstand that rush. He did a good job against Bosa. If you look against him in the Chargers game, he's also very quick off the line, which has had him get a little bit of false starts. But I think he's worked on that where he's getting better in that area. But it's a guy who has got great anticipation. The problem with him and getting him is he's never left the state of Florida to play football. He played football in high school there. He played football at College of Florida, and now he's there at the Jags. So that's the one thing, with the family thing where he may not want to exit. Maybe he takes a discount. Maybe he stays at home. I don't know. But I want Jawan Taylor. I think it's someone that is just can make a big difference for this Bears team.
Look at Jake.
Oh, man. Hopefully he can play in the cold then.
Jake breaking it down. His footwork, how he gets off the line, how long he's lived in Florida. That was pretty good.
I like him. He's the guy I've done the deepest dive on, and looking forward to doing more of that with Will and you and the whole team. I think it's just a great example. We all have a passion for Bears football, but especially this time of year, getting into free agency and the draft prospects, we're going to be bringing it for all of you Bears fans out there. So tell a friend.
Yeah, please tell a friend and have them join and be a diehard if you are a diehard. And if you're not a diehard, I'll see you show.
I don't just tell the friends. I tell the strangers. People are like, why are you talking? And I'm like, you're going to hear this until you subscribe to CHGO Sports, which is close to hitting 25K on YouTube. So let's go, guys. Tell your friends and the strangers around you.
Oh, when I went to Texas a week and a half ago, I was telling everybody I saw wearing a Bears hat, and I was wearing my CHGO hoodie. There's a woman working the Hertz rental car who's a big Bears fan, and I was talking it up, and she was talking about Roberto Garza, and I was like, this is tremendous. Let's go. I didn't know I can go to Texas and talk about some guards like that.
Yeah, he lives down there.
Yeah.
She was telling me hey, he does a camp in San Antonio every year for high schoolers, and we should come cover it. And
he's to me, one of the most underrated Bears ever. One of the most consistent Bears ever.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to bring him on our show. I've been trying to track him down, but I guess he's not big on reading Instagram DMs. But I'm going to get him one of these days. I swear to God.
You mentioned stories. I didn't have a great Super Bowl story, and I'll be quick with this, but he's also very hospitable. He and his wife at the time, we were doing these web chats at a previous employer. They let me come to their house. We did this where we were able to connect with fans, and he did a Q&A for us. Very, very nice people. And he did a great job with that. And I got to do that with Nick Roach and Alex Brown and a few other people too. So I always thought Garza was top notch. And like you said, he's a guy who got the most out of his talent and got better every year. And that comes down to it. I've been talking about this a lot lately. For me, it's the 4 Ds with the Bears. We're going to draft them. We're going to develop them. We're going to dominate. And then we're going to have the dynasty. And those 4 Ds are going to lead us to where we want to be.
I love it.
That's awesome. Greg, I'm going to go to you real quick. Who is an offensive lineman or a couple that's on your early list as of now?
Jake bringing the heat with the motivational team speech here.
Didn't expect, the 4D speech right now, but I'm writing it down. That's going to be
just took he just mopped the floor with my brick by brick there.
I don't think so. That's its own thing.
We got a lot of sayings going on here. That's good. Building a culture. We're helping. I'm going to start with my tackles. There's 2 positions on the offensive line that I'm geared in on. And first is tackle. Whether we get a left tackle or a right tackle, I do not care, but we need another tackle. If you have to slide Braxton Jones to the right side, maybe other people aren't a fan of that. Whatever they decide is I'm fine with, but I know we need another tackle. To me, I'll just say Mike McGlinchey first was the dream scenario. I see some people in the chat saying, Gary says he has back issues. Some people not big on Mike McGlinchey. I like Mike McGlinchey. I'm a Notre Dame guy. I'm totally fine with them bringing him in. We need a tackle. And he'd probably come at a big price. And there's a reason for that. He's good. Every player, you're going to be able to nitpick a flaw they have, I believe. I don't think there's any perfect offensive lineman coming out this year, so I'm also not, as I mentioned before, not the guy that's going to give you the offensive line expertise. I just know when I see a guy that can play. Mike McGlinchey can play. If he's available, the Bears should try to get him. Same goes for Orlando Brown. And again, I know some Bears fans watched one playoff game where he didn't look good or whatever. That's not how I see it. Orlando Brown is a realistic commodity. He might cost some money. The Bears have a lot of money. The cap just keeps going up. It's not my money. Get a tackle in here. You know, if you can find one of those smarter tackles like you guys are bringing up, great. I don't care who it is. At the end of the day, we need another tackle. You know, and I trust Ryan Poles in his offensive line evaluation skills. He's an offensive lineman himself, coming from Boston College. So I that's the one position group that I feel strongly that he's going to know how to attack. Found Braxton Jones in the 5th round last year.
Yes, sir.
You know, so to me, you know, that they have to get a tackle. I don't care who it is. They have to add to him and Braxton Jones, or, you know, that it's a failed offseason, in my opinion. The other position that they have to address is center. They have to. And the two names that I looked at, the dream scenario, which this one people are going to be like, what? He's about to retire. Jason Kelce. And he may retire, so this might be a moot point to bring up. But Jason Kelce is a great center. Jason Kelce is a badass. You know, and on top of that, his leadership is second to none. And they need that on this offensive line. Even if you could only get him on let's say you fill left tackle and you get a guard and you get this center on a 1-year deal. He would never come here. I get it. So this is the dream scenario. So it's almost like a moot point to bring up. But at the end of the day, I have a lot of respect for the way Jason Kelce plays the game. And I would love for him to be the leader in our locker room, even if it was only for 1 year. The more realistic center option that I looked at was Garrett Bradbury. Mm-hmm. If the Vikings can't re-sign him, which there's differentiating opinion on whether or not they can, that's a guy to me that's starting to ascend, a younger option, obviously, than Jason Kelce with some more tread on the tires. Garrett Bradbury from the Vikings, if they can bring him within the division over to us, I think that would be a huge signing. But those are the two needs I think are of the utmost important: center and left tackle.
Left tackle. Oh, you got specific
or on tackle. I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry.
You rein it back.
You caught me.
I did. That was a slip. That was a slip.
I mean, if you're going to pay that much for a tackle, you're going to pay top dollar. Don't you want it to be the left tackle?
Right? It depends. Like if we're going with the guy that, you know, Jake and I mentioned, and it's not top dollar, but he's still overpaying in free agency. Like I'm not going to force the fit. I mean, he's only played right tackle in his career, but I understand what you mean. I'm still at the point where I don't know if I move Braxton, if you like the mojo that's kind of brewing over on that left side, but I do understand if you're going to pay a premier price, put him at the premier position. I understand the logic behind it, Greg.
Right.
All right, real quickly, my guys on the inside, my dream scenario, and I know you just pissed off Gary in the chat with Orlando Brown Jr., so I'll rein him back in real quick.
I know. He's definitely strongly against him. He talks about it in the Discord chat all the time. I know that.
I know.
I think they even have a shirt they're making in honor of Gary's hatred for Orlando Brown.
Oh, God. Well, Ben Powers is someone that he likes and that I like, and that would be an awesome best case scenario for the Bears on the interior. He's only 26, 6'4", 340. Good luck moving him around up front. He's a premier pass protector. I told you that's the theme of my guys. He did not allow a single sack all season in Baltimore, and that's despite playing with, you know, multiple quarterbacks behind him. He had an 86.7 pass protection grade via PFF, which was the second highest of all interior offensive linemen last year. And if you want to know, like, how does that compare to the Bears? Well, Cody Whitehair was the Bears' best guard at a 66.9. This guy's an 86.7. Huge upgrade here for the Bears. And just like the other players on our list, is he the best run blocker? No. But can you coach that up and can you make your scheme help them out and have proper coaching emphasis put on it? Absolutely. But with the number one goal being protect Justin Fields, go get yourself the best left guard. He does have flexibility. He can play right, but I want him at left. Left guard out there to protect the quarterback, keep number one upright. And we all know that interior pocket, how important it is for quarterbacks. He will definitely shore that up. And I know you need a center right now. I don't have one on this list, but I agree with you, Greg. You just can't have to throw a guard in there and expect everything to be great. You do need a center. And then my other left guard real quick that I would settle for, Dalton Reisner. I look at him as like a poor man's Ben Powers, just a little bit older. He's 28, 6'5", 312. Just like Powers, better at pass protection than he is at run blocking. He'd ranked 19th of the starting 64 guards in the league. I'll take that all day over what we currently have. He only allowed 3 sacks, 6 quarterback hits all year for an anemic Browns offense that was just broken, as we all know. And he's durable. Only missed 3 games in his entire career. And I saw his average projection being only $6 million per season. That's another bargain type of player that can have a high floor to kind of help stabilize this Bears offensive line. So those are just a couple other guys on my wish list right now, or at least guys that are on my radar. Jake, Greg, anyone else you wanted to add here for this segment?
Maybe just Will Hernandez for me. Again, like we're kind of finding out, right? There's no perfect offensive lineman. I don't know if, it's hard to have an all Hall of Famer, right? I don't know if that's out there right now. And I mean, maybe in the draft, but we don't.
We'll let Gary pick the offensive lineman, because if not, he's going to make me buy him another sandwich, it looks like.
That works. Man. But Will Hernandez, I think, is a guy who was with the Giants, drafted there. I remember him out of Texas, El Paso. I liked what I saw. I think pass protection, though, will be like, what the focus is there. I think he can play right guard. I think you could plug him in there and it would be an upgrade, I believe. But again, like I look at it like this. It's kind of like what the Bears did last year, right? They brought in a few veterans to challenge what they had in the fold. And, like Riley Reif and you need to kind of do that sort of thing. And even some that didn't work out, right? Help me. I'm blanking right now. Who's the veteran that they brought in that just didn't really.
Lucas Patrick.
Well, Lucas Patrick had the injuries, but no, the other guy, the local guy, it's awful. I'm blanking right now. We'll remember him later. But you bring in the veterans, even if they don't work out, right, for competition, whatever. I don't think that would be the situation with, like, if Will Hernandez was brought in. Like, I think he would probably be pegged to be your starting right guard. But like, you gotta try to upgrade, even if it feels minimal, because it's so important, and you need the depth at that position anyway. So
Gary, our offensive line guru, Michael Schofield.
Thank you. That's right, Michael Schofield. Exactly. It just didn't work out, right? But you needed to bring him in for depth. You need that presence, and Hernandez again would be several tiers above that. But what I'm saying is, don't just say like, oh, we're okay, we got a good tackle, or like you said, like maybe you get a center too. But like, hey, if there's a guard out there, it's an upgrade. Like, go after him. We've got the money. Go get him.
Yep. Beggars can't be choosers is the saying. And right now, the Bears are begging for a better offensive line. They're begging for a better defensive line. You might be able to pick and choose at other spots on this roster to add, but in those two position groups, we need as much help as we can get.
Definitely.
So, as I've always, I will always be the first to admit there's smarter people than me in a lot of this stuff, and I will defer to a lot of those people. At the end of the day, they got to bring in people, bodies. Because last year we were playing with a lot of guys. Justin Fields was playing with a lot of guys at the end of the year that are third or fourth string players on most rosters. So they need bodies on top of bodies.
Yeah, definitely reinforcements, both sides of the trenches, bolster them up. And I saw from the Matt Nagy account in the chat, like, the list of terrible sightings goes on and on for polls, and talked about some offensive linemen. Again, like, it was kind of like punting last offseason to get to this year and having it as flexible as possible. And like he did, I think, the best given the circumstances, and not wanting to overspend or not really spend at all last year. This year's going to be different, 100%. Like, just give it a month and you'll see that this year is going to be a completely different approach to free agency. And you're not going to have these minimal guys making a minimal impact. Like, he's going to find true players to actually bolster this team, especially in the trenches. He's not going to do that here this offseason. All right, so we're going to talk some Keenan Allen here in a few minutes. But before we do, I want to make sure, if ready or not, here comes the biggest Sunday in sports. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 57, has all of the Super Bowl action you need. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, all customers can get in on the Super Bowl 57 excitement with the DraftKings Happy Hour Super Boost. Check the DraftKings Sportsbook app every single day between 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central to see which prop bet will be boosted. And of course, honestly, as of right now, I don't know which team I'm going to place my bet on. But what I love about both teams is that they have offensive firepower. So if you're looking to make a same game parlay, and what I love about DraftKings is you can kind of like tailor them to your liking. If you want to go on those minimal, like the minimum amount of passing yards from Mahomes and Hurts and just keep stacking them up, sure you can get a really good like odds and a little bit of a bet can get you a pretty big payout. At least that's my plan heading into this weekend. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code CHGO. New customers can bet $5 on Super Bowl 57 and get 200 in bonus bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code CHGO. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
And I want to tell you about our guys over at FOCO, especially for my guy Chubbs. This is his favorite ad read of all of the ones we do. And Chicago, you've already got the best coverage for your favorite teams. So get fitted out in the best sports gear around. FOCO got you covered from Soldier Field to the living room, north or south side, with hoodies, slippers, signs, bobbleheads, and everything in between. Get decked out like DeMar with apparel from the leader in sports merch and collectibles, FOCO. Looking for the perfect gift for the football fan in your life? FOCO's got you covered with hoodies to fight that Lake Michigan breeze. Check out FOCO.com or click the link in the description below for all non-presale items. Use the promo code CHGO for 10% off. FOCO, FOCO.
Good stuff there, Greg. And speaking of good stuff, I kind of got excited earlier today when I saw the report from the Athletics' Daniel Popper. He covers the Chargers, and he wrote about some ways that team can save money. If you don't understand like how awesome the Bears situation is, like in terms of like having all that money to spend, the Chargers are like $23 million over the cap. Like they have no money to spend. They have to find a way to create some cap space. So one of those creative ways, and I'll use that term loosely here on the podcast, is releasing Keenan Allen, who has saved the team about $15 million. Now, I want to ask you guys, would this 30-year-old wide receiver actually make sense here in Chicago? Is he someone that the Bears should actually like pursue heavily in free agency if he's let go? Maybe, have to offer a trade if there ends up becoming like, some interest before, but I feel like if they're going to cut him, he'll hit free agency. It's just my gut feeling right here. But what are your thoughts about Keenan Allen potentially becoming a Bear? Greg, Jake, I'll leave it open to you.
I mean, I'm huge on this. And this is what's so exciting about this offseason, like you said, Will, because there are going to be situations like this, maybe even other players that we don't even realize start showing up on the radar. We brought up T. Higgins. We've dug that up and created this conspiracy theory of how we could get T. Higgins. And that, to me, is a realistic scenario that could play out, as much as people want to say it's not. It is. And this is another scenario that now has popped up because, a Chargers beat writer brings up this point. Look at their cap space. Look at what their best, ways to get underneath that are. Now, all of a sudden, Keenan Allen could become available, and you don't have to trade, draft commodity to bring in a guy. Yes, we need wide receivers for the long term. That's why I like an idea of a T. Higgins or something like that. Somebody that we can secure a spot for and guarantee that he's going to be here for the next few years. But at the end of the day, again, we need players. And this guy is a player. Yes, he's had injury history. Who doesn't in the National Football League? Everybody gets hurt. It's a brutal sport. So it's not like you're breaking the bank for Keenan Allen. He's a veteran. He's a guy that is a great route runner, great hands, gets open. When we brought in Allen Robinson, obviously Allen was younger, but he had a veteran presence to him. This wide receiver room could use that veteran presence with Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, and I think he's a good fit with those three guys. Is he the first option of all the players we've gone through in our wide receiver dreams with DeAndre Hopkins and Mike Evans? And I've got a whole list. of players that I'm dreaming about like that. T. Higgins is obviously at the top if he were to become available in that kind of a scenario. But this is somebody, every wide receiver that becomes available should be somebody the Bears are considering. And this guy has a pedigree. And if he ends up being the one that makes the most sense because other guys we can't get, then yeah, they need to look at that. Because as much as people want to say, get Wilson in the draft, get Wayne in the draft, get whoever, you can't guarantee those players are going to fall to you.
Yeah.
And we have to have some security before we even get to the draft that we have something, for Justin Fields going into next year. So yeah, I am so happy that name got brought up today because that's just another option for the Bears to consider. We need as many options in case the chips don't fall perfectly into our way like we all dream up as Bears fans.
Now, I see some divisiveness in the chat here, one way or the other. We do have a poll that is live right now here on YouTube on whether or not you would like to see the Bears go after Keenan Allen. So go check it out. Make your voice heard there, and we'll tell the results of that poll after this conversation. But I think, Greg, you brought up a lot of good points. And the one thing, I guess, when you live over here, in the Midwest, and Allen's been on the West Coast his entire career, like my, I guess, most familiarity with him is like my fantasy teams. And I feel like he always lets me down there. And that's just, again, it's fantasy football. We don't need to really talk about that, but that's just like, I've noticed like the injuries. I've noticed him not performing in some of those bigger moments when I would expect, but you're right. Like in terms of like a pure talent standpoint, he would offer the Bears so much that they don't have right now at the positional group. And I love the fact that he can play in the slot. You can line him outside. You said it. He just finds ways to get open. We know Justin Fields needs guys who can create more separation, make plays after the catch. And he just makes plays in general once he's healthy and he's out there on the field. Before this season, he was voted to the Pro Bowl 5 seasons in a row. Like, how could you sneeze at that? He's had 992 or more yards every single season too, besides this past year with extra time missed due to injuries. He's also had 6 touchdowns or more every single season over the last 5 years up until this year because of the injury. So he can produce the yards. We know he can score. And I know he's been like oft injured, but I was actually surprised when I saw he's played 14 or more games every single one besides this year since 2017. That was more than I thought. Like off the top of my head, I thought he was missing like half season, a quarter to season here, but 14 or more every year since 2017, besides this past season alone, is interesting. Now, does price become a factor? I think here it may for me, as much as the Bears do have a lot of flexibility with the cap space. If they want to go after Keenan Allen, I think the price has to be right. It needs to be a shorter term deal. It needs to have flexibility to get out of that deal a little sooner than maybe you would like, maybe due to injuries, maybe just he's not performing as well. And I know a lot of people would kind of like not want to go after a 30-year-old plus wide receiver in free agency. But I think Allen's different because he's not like someone that's just contracts expiring and he's hitting the market because there's no re-sign interest. He's someone that may just have to go in order for the Chargers to kind of keep operations afloat, just due to them being in the negative cap space right now. He has a huge contract, and then they have other players there, Mike Williams, that can step up. So it makes sense for them to maybe let go of Allen. So there's a lot of reasons why I like it. There's definitely a few reasons why I'm concerned, but I do think if the price is right and it's a shorter term deal, maybe a 2-year deal with a 30-year like option tagged on the back end, I can live with it. I really could.
I'm gonna come clean, guys. 5 minutes ago, I didn't really see there being that much value in Keenan Allen because I'm thinking big picture. I'm thinking long term, all that. But to hear Braggs and to hear you, Will, I think this is to credit both of you. I'm all in on Keenan Allen, and I'll tell you why. It's because I'm all in on Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool. And I think the more you guys kind of talked through Keenan Allen, what's he great at? He's great at he can line him up wherever. He's versatile, right? He can catch the ball as well as anyone in the league. He's not going to have those drops. He's awesome on third down. And that's something that the Bears and Justin Fields need, is a guy on third down where the defense knows that it could be going to Allen and he's still going to make the catch, or it frees up Darnell and Chase or whoever else, potentially Cole, from the tight end position. I like this a lot. I also just credit to seasonal content assistant Omar Navarro from the LA Chargers website. He said since week 13, so the last 6 weeks of the season, 50 receptions for Keenan Allen led the NFL.
Yeah.
So it tells you he was back, and I think he played better down the stretch than maybe even in my mind, my short-term memory loss situation that must be going on was telling me. So you know what? Like, this actually may make more sense if the Mike Evans thing, or if the DeAndre Hopkins thing that you guys, we all want, right? That's what we're hoping is underneath the Christmas tree, but it's probably not going to be there. Let's be honest. It's going to be
it could.
It's going to be tough. It'd be great. It'd be great.
Yeah. But
Keenan Allen would not be bad. Keenan Allen would be great if you mixed him with those two, with Mooney and Claypool, and then maybe you draft a person.
Exactly. You can draft someone early too, and like really just go all out, load it up, and have best man available on any given down. And with Allen's injury history, again, that has to be taken into account. If he's available for 12 games, I think I would accept that. Like, if he's going to give you 12 games of Keenan Allen, awesome. And then if some other rookie receiver joins the mix and can develop along the way, and he's going to be the guy to kind of take over once Allen's 2-year deal or so is up, and then you don't have to worry about, okay, now we have to draft another guy and develop him, and you can just kind of have that seamless transition. Yeah. And you don't have to, with these other guys like Higgins or Hopkins, give up draft capital when the Bears are going to be acquiring additional draft capital. You can hold that and you can use it in other resources, whether it be in the draft or for some other trades. I think there's a lot of ways that this could be a win-win.
It's just another option, as I said before. We have to have as many quality options as we can get, because they're not all going to work out. And we're not going to have the pick of the litter from every option. There's going to be different. DeAndre Hopkins has a no trade clause. So even if the Cardinals are willing to trade him, Hopkins will be like, I'm not going to Chicago because I want to go to somewhere where they're ready to win right now. Mm-hmm. And he may not believe that, me, Jake, and Carm already have the Bears in the Super Bowl next year. We could make that call if our guys over at PHNX can, hook us up with a meet and greet, and we'll convince him. But if that doesn't happen, then we got to have as many options as we can. Mike Evans, there's a Bucks beat writer who is adamant that they're not trading any of the wide receivers, Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. So it starts to dwindle away. If those scenarios play out, I'm going to keep all options on the table. These are quality options. I saw somebody say earlier, we have plenty of guys. We need to get that dude. We do not have plenty of guys. We have Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool, both of which still have things to prove going into this year, both of which are in the last year of their contract. And that's it. We're thin. If either one of those guys get hurt, we have Velus Jones and St. Brown, who and the rest of them, that were from last year, better not be on my football team. All respect to Dante Pettis and everybody else that was after him. That was our problem, is the depth. We had Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool last year, and then as soon as one got hurt, now all of a sudden the cupboard was bare. Yeah. And to get that dude, of course we all want that dude. Yeah. But if you can't get that dude for a long-term contract, T. Higgins is that dude, contrary to some people's belief on Twitter. But that may not happen. So you got to hold over. And Rob Schwartz says in the chat, and Will just brought it up too, the draft to not have to give up draft capital to get a guy like Keenan Allen is also big if you still want to stay in the Marvin Harrison sweepstakes. Let's say the Bears do trade back to 4 or 9 and add additional first-round picks going forward. Well, depending on where the Bears are drafting next year, and this is, really getting ahead of ourselves, but the Bears may need to trade up to get to Marvin Harrison. So you not only want additional draft capital in the first round, but in the later rounds too. So you can say, okay, here's because we had suggested, 2 third-round picks for DeAndre Hopkins, because that's exactly what we traded for Brandon Marshall. Well, if you don't have those third-round picks going forward, you can't use one of those to sweeten the pot next year for a team to move up like 4 spots or whatever to get Marvin Harrison. Not that I don't think any team's going to be ready to be like, here you go, here's Marvin Harrison, but we need as much draft capital as we want or can get so we could dream those dreams next offseason after we've won the Super Bowl.
That's what I'm excited for. Like if they hit this offseason right, well, the Super Bowl, of course, I'm excited for. But I just meant like in terms of keeping draft capital and allowing yourself to build it up for years down the line. So if we can walk out of this one knowing that 2024 we're set, and then you allow yourself to do the same thing for 25, and then you just know like, okay, I can trade for a guy, I can move up and down the board as I please. Like that sort of flexibility. I mean, that's powerful. Like that gives you power in this league, whether it be leverage for trades, leverage in the draft. And the Bears have, in my lifetime, I could not tell you any single time they've ever had that. And I love for a GM to kind of adopt that model here and bring it to Chicago. And I'm hoping Poles with this scenario of having that first pick to allow yourself to really start accumulating draft capital in a hurry to adopt that. And I really hope he's the guy to do it.
I think he is. And, talking through that, it makes me think about this situation. Ryan Poles, in my opinion, has some pretty legit job security, right? Like if you're looking at the situation, right? Like we're early into this, right? So he's not in a position where, man, this offseason, it's all riding on. I got to make this move. I got to trade that. I got to do that. So like that's something that is different. And that's also, you see that around the league all the time. And I think that is something that us as Bears fans, we have going for us. And that really, but I wonder with Poles, like, will the security actually be a benefit too? Because he's going to say, well, hey, I can make this risk because I've got this much on the back end. And I think that could be it too. But last point would be this. If I'm a little jumbled, I'm sorry, but I just got a lot of thoughts, a lot of positive thoughts going through my head. I can just see visions of, the Lombardi trophy being raised. So I apologize. I don't apologize. I'm not sorry. I guess the key takeaway here is this: will the Bears be where we want them to be the first week of May? And that's when we'll know, right? We'll know then what they did in this offseason. Do they believe right now that, hey, we're going to compete this year? We're going to go for a playoff spot. Who knows what happens, right? Or we're going to say, hey, they're more competitive. They did a good job. But there's a chance that they may just blow us away, and we're going to be like, holy, I don't know if the Bears are, I think the Bears may be the favorite in the division. Like there is a chance that occurs. And I think none of us really believe that right now. But I think if we really want to be positive about this, that is a chance. There's a chance for that, right? It is a possibility.
Absolutely.
Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, look at the Jaguars last year. They picked first in the draft last year, number 1 pick, Trevor Lawrence, and a whole lot of cap space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of Bears fans last offseason, I can remember making fun of a lot of the moves the Jaguars made, signing Christian Kirk. And they actually didn't hit in a lot of ways on their number 1 pick. They should have drafted Hutchinson in a lot. Mm-hmm. If you're, just going off of production and in my opinion, they should have drafted Aiden Hutchinson. They don't. Now we got to deal with them. So thanks a lot, Jacksonville. But that didn't stop them. Why? Because they filled the roster out with the cap space they had with guys. Not all of them were that dude. Christian Kirk is not that dude, but he helped because his name isn't Dante Pettis. Again, all respect to Dante Pettis as I continue to disrespect his name. Yeah. But at the same time, that's what happened. They filled their roster. They had draft picks, draft capital, and they had a quarterback that has a ton of talent. Sound familiar? That's what the Bears are in right now. Now, Ryan Poles has to attack. Now, I think his job security is safe, but I hope he doesn't rest on those laurels.
Right.
I want him. I think he has been a shark. I like the way he carries himself. And I think that there is going to be a lot of pressure on him to get Justin Fields to the next level next year because everybody, even the players in the league, are like, this is that dude.
Right.
And you can't have Bryce Young or other guys showing out, Trevor Lawrence making it to the playoffs and starting to ascend, and us still, dragging our feet with Justin Fields. You got to turn him in. You got to unleash him next year, even more so than you did this year. So, and I don't think Ryan Poles is that type of guy. I think he is going to be a shark, and he's not going to sit back and be like, I'm safe. I think he is going to attack this offseason and be very aggressive in different ways.
Aggressive, not desperate, right?
Yeah, there's a difference. Right. Pace was the opposite.
Right, of that right. Will, is there in the back of your mind, is there that slight thought, maybe this is like the dream off season and not just a development off season, or like, oh, we're taking, a few solid steps. Do you feel like this could be an offseason where they make a giant leap and it's like, wow, they blow you away next year? Or are you just kind of staying where most fans are, like, hey, well, let's see progress?
You're talking to the guy who talked himself into 11 wins last year. I can definitely talk myself into an off season to remember. The one thing that, Greg, you mentioned the Jags, how they're able to kind of turn it around in that 1 year. I was just looking through their scores of that 2021 season. They only had 4 games that they lost that were 1-score games. All the other ones were blowouts. And you know how competitive the Bears were and all of these games this season. I think that gives me even more hope of hey, you build around that and you can take that jump, a similar jump, if not maybe a slightly bigger jump here in Chicago, because I feel like the Bears are closer this year than the Jags were a year ago, even though they both held that first overall pick. And one thing I wanted to add about that draft capital, one more time, I want to hit home because I want to make sure I explain it correctly. If you can trade back twice this year and you enter 2024 knowing you have 3 first-round picks, including your own. So you have 2 others in your own. And one of them ends up being a top 5 pick next year. You can trade down, probably get another first-round pick for 2025, still get your 3 first-rounders in 2024. And then hey, in 2025, I have 2 first-round picks. You can keep doing that game.
It's essential.
You just kick the can down the road. And then whenever a player becomes available via trade, you're well, hey, I have an extra first-rounder in my back pocket. That just gives you all the leverage. There'd be no one in the league that's out of your out of your range. You can go get anybody you want if they're available.
This is why I started crying when the Texans won last week. That's why Will was so excited when he was at Lucas Oil Stadium. Our guy Will DeWitt. We were lit. I was hugging the bear in our studios. I was lit. We were all lit. Corey Wooten was going crazy with us because this is the opportunity we have. Contrary to the people that think we should get Justin Fields out of here, we're not. This is why it's so vital, because then we have the opportunity to add draft capital in the future and also this year, because as someone earlier pointed out in the chat, we have the first pick and then our second pick in the second round isn't until 58? Or something.
It's 50, close to there.
50 or 58. Somebody in the chat will know. I should know, but I'll know later. Regardless, we have a long gap between our second pick. So we have to trade back just so we can get back into the early second round to start giving ourselves more options this year too. And we have that opportunity with one trade back. 54. Thank you, Gary, our draft guru. You can take my spot, Gary. I'll give it to you.
Well, and hey, everyone's saying, right, hey, trade back here, get this player in a deal and more picks in next year's first, and then trade again and get this player and multiple first-round picks for the next 5 years. Obviously, that's not going to play out just like that, right? That's a dream scenario that it's not going to happen. It's fairy tales. But we can all agree that we all believe that the Bears more than likely will trade down, and most likely that's their best course of action. But the most disappointing thing that could happen in this offseason for the Bears is if they draft a player with the top pick. Am I right there? Do we feel the same way?
I would be livid. I would be livid. You just saying ideally they trade back and immediately my eyes shot up because they absolutely must.
But they might not
trade back. I don't think it takes 2 to tango. Maybe everyone will call the Bears bluff on it and maybe Poles will ask a little bit too much for that pick. But
again, that's why it was so important to get the number 1 pick, because our worst case scenario is Will Anderson. That is our worst case scenario. That's a really great worst case scenario. When I was the only one in studio during the Packers game rooting for the Bears to lose that game, and people Kevin was ready to rip my head off at one point because I'm I stood by it though, because of the moment we're in now. Because if not, we would have been drafting. Yeah, exactly. It'd be stupid. They at the very least can trade back to 2 and say, Houston, give us whatever you got so you can ensure who you want. To me, that makes them, that's the worst case scenario, because then we still end up with Will Anderson. But even still, let's say nobody trades up. We end up with Will Anderson. That's pretty exciting. We would all love the trade backs. I'm going to be upset. We're all going to be upset. But then after about 5 minutes, we're going to accept the fact that we have Will Anderson on our team. So, yeah, we all are doing, armchair GM stuff. But, we're in a really great position, as an organization and Ryan Poles as the GM.
No, I agree with Kyle though. If they pick number 1, I would go full hungry Homer and go on a hunger strike. And obviously I'm a guy that I can't last long on. I can't last long on a hunger strike. But I would make my point known how upset I am. Maybe I'll find a different outlet to make that point across. But that's how upset. I don't know if I can eat. It may just not even be like a choice. Like I may just not be able to eat for a few days.
And I had fans telling me throughout the year that it doesn't matter where because when I was like rooting for the losses, which some fans want to rip my head off for, that's fine. I get that. But their argument was it doesn't matter where you draft. Yeah. Because if you trust your GM, he should be able to get a good player anywhere in the first round. Because look at where, Aaron Donald went. Look at where this guy went. And there's examples at every pick of a great player. I'm sure there's a Hall of Famer that was picked at every pick in the first round in the history of the NFL. But that's why if we trade back to 9 and we don't end up with Jalen Carter or Will Anderson, you shouldn't freak out because now you've added all this draft equity and we're back to picking at 9 where we would have if they had lucked their way into 2 or 3 more wins. So yeah, that's you just got to carry a perspective, a healthy perspective in this and see where the dust settles.
There's a super chat from the Bears 85, which is very similar to what we're talking about right now. Like, what if nobody in the top 4 wants to trade back? Like, how far do you go before you're willing to just say, no, that's too far back. I'm going to pick a number 1. Is it 9? Like, I don't like even 9. It's a top 10 pick. I don't love it just given like where we're currently at. I don't have a magic number in front of me. Maybe 7. I don't know. Outside of the top 5 would feel okay if I do trade back maybe twice. I don't know yet, but you mentioned 9. And like, does anyone have like a hard number right now?
No, yeah, I have my eyes set at 9 because they just hired Frank Reich in Carolina, quarterback quarterback guru, however you want to say it. He's going to want his quarterback. Carolina's a pretty competitive team. If they just got the quarterback position figured out, they might be onto something in the NFC South. So I definitely have them eyeballed. And then you're still in the top 10. 9-1 is a huge jump. They're going to be giving crazy draft equity. A crazy haul would come in return. The Bears blog, however you feel about him or not, he's gotten a lot of things right in years past, especially last offseason when it came to the coaching rumors that were coming out in Chicago. I like Jeff. I got no issue with Jeff. And he's throwing things out that say number 11. Tennessee. How come nobody's talking about him? And that got my ears perked up because it's like, oh yeah, nobody's bringing that up. The Jets at 13.
That's where I was going to go. Jets at 13 for me. But you know what? What we need the Titans and the Jets at 11 and 13 to actually give a shit and want to trade up because that will drive the price up for those other teams.
Exactly.
And that's what we want. We need that. We need all these quarterbacks that are going to be doing their pro days and at the combine. We need them to just kill it. We want to have as many solid top 10 caliber quarterbacks that are up there. And I've said this too, and I'll stop. But I feel so strongly. It depends on the haul. Like if you get a haul from one of those teams down below, like whatever, you
will get a haul from Carolina, Tennessee, or the Jets.
But I feel strongly after, like I said, I think I tweeted it out yesterday. After a lot of thought, that the Bears must trade down to 2. As long as they know that the Texans will take the quarterback 1, because I just think there's so much value if they can get a number 1 from the Texans for next season, knowing the Texans will be in that top 5. I really think you could then just do it again. And I know a lot of people are saying go to 4 and then do it again, or go like I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong to think that? Like, do you?
It just depends on how strongly teams. If teams feel just as strongly about C.J. Stroud as they do Bryce Young, then yeah, we're in the honeypot there.
And I do.
And the way he played against Georgia, I would think that there's got to be a few teams out of these quarterback desperate teams that would want him. We're just going to have to see how that plays out. But it'll certainly be interesting. The thing that the Carolina, the Titans, and the Jets all have in common is they're close. They're closer than like a team that has a ton of needs like the Bears. So maybe they're more willing to give up a lot of draft capital because they have a team and they just need a quarterback in some ways. I'm not saying they don't have other holes, but like a team like Houston, we want a huge haul from 1 to 2, or the Colts even at 4 and 12 and 1 want a huge haul from them. They may not be willing to give that up because at the end of the day, yeah, they need a quarterback, but they need a lot of other things too. These other 3 teams may not have as many holes where they could justify giving us a crazy haul for picks in the future when they're looking to win in the short term.
So many scenarios. It's going to be a lot of fun. It is. It's exciting now. It's only going to continue to get even more exciting as we get closer and closer to the draft. I actually want to get back to that poll, though, from Keenan Allen. I need to know where Bears fans stand on Allen. Steven, do you want to pop on and let us know, man?
Yeah, so we got over 100 votes, which is great. Question was, would you be in favor of the Bears signing Keenan Allen? And yes was the overwhelming winner with 72% of the vote.
72%. Wow, it feels that's more optimistic than the people in the chat typically were when we're
the chat and the poll were very, very different.
It felt different, but I'm glad that in a more of an anonymous setting.
Exactly.
Yeah, silent majority.
Yeah. That's right. Exactly. I love the silent majority. The silent majority, they rock. Let's go. Any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap up tonight's show? I thought this has been a lot of fun. I didn't expect some of this draft talk at the end, but I think I needed it here today and tonight. So thank you for that.
I think we're going to find our way into these draft tangents every show. I mean, because we're getting closer and closer. The closer we get, the more excited we're going to get. Free agency comes along. That's going to start to kind of bring you a better picture of how they're going to attack the draft. This is the biggest offseason in Chicago Bears history. A new president, huge, free agency, capital, whatever you want to say, and crazy amount of draft capital and a quarterback. We have a quarterback. Contrary to the people that don't believe we do, we have a quarterback and a rising star at that. So, and new stadium on the horizon. I mean, it's just right now, ironically enough, in the year that we were the worst team in the NFL, it is the biggest offseason, not just because they need to turn things around, but because they have that opportunity right there in front of them to do that too.
Yeah, a lot of excitement here. Thank you guys for letting me join you. I look forward to hopefully popping on a few times over the course of the next few months and working with you behind the scenes on some draft content too. I'm pretty excited. And just for everyone too, hey, thank you for your support. Thanks for watching. Become a diehard. We would love you to do that. We got these podcasts, we got the live shows, we've got premium written content. We got dope merch, and guys, you can chime in on this too. But we need you all. If you're a Bears diehard fan, then you should be a CHGO diehard member. It's as simple as that. So go check it out today at allchgo.com.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I would like to add on to the diehard program that I just love is the 20% off merch, 20% off events all the time as a diehard. So if you're a big diehard Bears fan, like Jake said, maybe you're going to come hang out with us during a tailgate, maybe a Bears takeover next year, and it gives you 20% off your ticket into the door for the tailgate, tickets to actually go see this game. And it'll be, obviously, that's a great deal. And we want to continue to build this epic community that I know we're building here in Chicago sports. And, obviously we do more than just the Bears here, Bulls, Blackhawks, White Sox, every team. I didn't say the Cubs on purpose. I'm kidding. Go Cubs, go. But definitely check it out. It's allchgo.com/diehard. It explains it probably better than we just did here. But I promise you that once you check it out, you'll understand why this program is so special here in Chicago. And if you're not in Chicago, it's a great way to connect with other people who love Chicago sports. So it's good if you're remote. Yeah. It's good if you're local. It's great for everybody.
Right. And virtual happy hours. Yep, Wednesday nights, we're doing virtual happy hours for all the teams, kind of rotating through. Bears will have a heavy influence on that, over the course of the next 3 months in the off season. And then, of course, Kevin Kaduk, our head of content, has been doing an outstanding job along with you, Will, and the rest of the team of, putting together this NFL draft free agency tracker that's only available exclusively to diehards. And the same thing with the NFL draft tracker, where you can go in there, see kind of how we all feel that these prospects and these free agent targets are, kind of sizing up and be a part of that, which is kind of a unique situation too, which I love.
For sure. Of course, always wanting to add value, and we're putting a lot, and I mean a lot of man hours into these cheat sheets, tracker boards, whatever you want to call them. It's pretty much a great way to get some more insight into where like our notes are on some of these players, both for agency and the draft. And we're going to be adding them between now, we were last week, the week before, all the way to the draft and all the way through free agency. To definitely check that out. If you're a diehard, become a diehard to check that out if you're not already. And one last ask, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, almost to 25K. And then if you're listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a review. We would love to hear your input on our show. Tell us how much you love it. Tell us how excited you are for this Bears offseason. We would love to hear your thoughts there too. But that's going to do it for us here tonight. So for Jake Flannigan, Greg Braggs Jr., this is Will DeWitt. We'll talk to you soon. Oh, wait. One more thing. There's a lot of content coming from the Bears team in Phoenix, down at Radio Row all week from the Super Bowl. So stay tuned all week for some epic. We already had what we said. Ryan Leaf earlier was on today.
I think Eric Kramer tomorrow.
A lot of great guests. Noon, the normal noon Central Time for CHGO Bears the next 4 days. Radio Row at the Super Bowl. You don't know what you're gonna find, in that show. Just people walking by, popping up, popping in, but great content for sure that you're gonna want to see.
Exactly. So definitely check it out all week long. But we'll be back on here soon. But until next time, I'm on. Bear down, Chicago.